Hello, welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. Pretty much everything under the sun relates to you having a happier, healthier relationship with money. My name is Steve Sexton. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to send a special thanks to all our listeners, our viewers. We have over 600,000 here in the United States now, and we're increasing to over 60,000 overseas. So we're very thankful for that. Thanks for sharing us with your friends and family. Now, today, we're going to be talking about timeshares. You know what? The ins, the outs, the ups and downs. How do you redeem timeshares? How do you spot a good investment without all the pressure that goes along with the timeshare? We're so lucky to have the Timeshare Crusader, Lisa Schreier, here. Now, Lisa's been participating in timeshares since 1998. She started her career as a salesperson and a manager with resorts in around the Orlando area. Now, she, like a lot of people, grew increasingly frustrated with the antiquated marketing, high pressure sales techniques that sadly are still the norm. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Now, what she did is she flipped the script and said, hey, I want to be a catalyst for positive change. So she wrote the book, Surviving a Timeshare Presentations, Confessions from a Sales Table, and Timeshare Vacations for Dummies. Now, she's also co-authored a definitive college textbook on timeshares. She's a frequent contributor to major media outlets, sought-after speaker, consumer advocacy groups. She provides content to consumeraffairs.com, Senior News, Rockstar Finance, and she's got this really cool blog called Tell It Like It Is. It's the Timeshare Crusader blogspot.com, where she covers all the essential issues and all that kind of good stuff. So Lisa, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me, Steve. Very much looking forward to this.
You know what? I'm going to say this, our listeners have been looking forward to this more than you know, because even though I do financial consulting on the side, I'm on it along with what I do. There's a lot of people who have timeshares, and some are very frustrated with them. Some are very happy with them. And some felt like they got pressured from the day, from the second they walked into the room, so to speak. And others said, hey, it was the best experience I've ever had. So what I'd like you to do is just kind of walk through, when somebody signs up for a timeshare, like for the last time I was in Hawaii, they said, hey, if you'd like to go do this snorkeling event, instead of paying $200 a person, you can do it for $45 or for free if you go to this presentation. So how do they typically, is that typically the way they bring people in?
Yes. Most people buy a timeshare while they're on vacation. And typically you are bribed or incentivized, to use a better word. You are bribed with either, as you said, a discount on some tickets for local activities, or sometimes it's a discounted stay at the resort. But typically you're incentivized, and in what your part of it is that you need to attend this sales presentation, which sometimes is called the sales presentation, oftentimes it's called a resort update, but rest assured, it's a sales presentation. And as you and many of your listeners have probably experienced, they're never quite as short as they make it sound to be. And it's never simple, and it's almost always high pressure. But that's how the vast majority of people get purchased their first timeshare, is directly from the developer. Yes.
Now, so help people understand the psychology behind the presentation. So somebody comes in there, is it a big group type presentation where everybody's sitting in just chairs in a big conference area, or are they done at tables and people are being talked to in a group of 4 or 5, or is it done individually? How's it done?
Great question, Steve. It can be done any number of ways. When I was still selling timeshare, it was an individual thing. So I, as the salesperson, went out to the lobby, I met my clients, and it was a one-on-one presentation. I have seen resorts where they do a group presentation, also known as a podium pitch, because there's somebody up at a podium pitching the timeshare. But at some point, you are going to be separated from a group and have a one-on-one with your salesperson who's going to be showing you the benefits and the price of whatever it is they're selling. But typically, most presentations that I'm familiar with, they start off as a one-on-one, because part of the psychology, as you were talking about, is the warm-up, where the salesperson is trained to warm up, talk to you as a person, not as a client, get to know you, get your guard down a little bit before they start in with the actual sales presentation, which typically it's a 10-step presentation. The most important part, and what I always tell consumers, the most important part of the presentation is where the salesperson is asking you, the client, the questions. And the reason I say it's the most important, Steve, is because most people don't understand this, but the person asking the questions is the one in control of the presentation. So always remember that the person asking is the one in control.
That's really important to know, because if you're not asking the questions, that means you've lost control. And then what's the next step after the questions?
It's the uncovering of the so-called vacation problem. What would make your vacations better? And whatever the answer is, whatever your answer is as the client, the answer is always going to be, this timeshare will solve your vacation problems. So it's the uncovering of the vacation problem. The solution in form of the timeshare is then presented. Then you typically go on a tour, you see the resort, you see the lovely amenities, the room. At this point, you still don't have any idea of what the price is. Then we come back and then we discuss the price, the closing, maybe a sales manager is called in, but in most typical timeshare presentations, the price is never discussed until towards the end of the presentation.
Okay, so if somebody says, well, how much does all this cost? They'll just say, hey, we'll get to that. Is that usually what the response is?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So, and then how does, how do they present the price? That's actually has to be done in a special way, because people are spending, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to get a timeshare.
Right. The price of a timeshare is typically presented after the salesperson has uncovered or talked about how much is the client spending already on vacation. So we talk about, they will talk about hotel costs. They will talk about hotel inflation. They will talk about how many more years of vacation are you planning on doing? And then they will compare that price with the price of whatever timeshare that they're showing you.
Okay.
So it's never presented in a vacuum. What I mean is it's always used as a comparison to what are you spending now and what will you spend in the future.
I see. Okay. So basically the whole goal is to say, hey, this is a less expensive option that's really, really, really nice.
Correct.
Now, okay. So, and then if somebody says, yeah, I'd like to go forward, but I can't write you a check for $20,000. You know what? Do they have payment plans?
Yes, most timeshares will take a deposit, a down payment, 10, maybe 20%, sometimes less. And here's where consumers get into problems, is that the developer will usually offer convenient, I say convenient in quotes, convenient in-house financing, which, hang on to your hats, is typically 15, 16, or 17% spread out over typically 7 to 10 years. So that adds a huge amount to the purchase price of the timeshare, which people sometimes in the ether of the whole thing don't quite understand.
Wow. So in other words, at 17%, they're almost double paying for something over a 10-year period, or more than double paying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So if you're going to buy it, you're better off finding your own financing or pay cash. Now, do timeshares look at these programs when they're selling it and say, hey, you know what, that's a lost sale if they don't move forward today?
Yes, that's one of the biggest problems I had with timeshare, is the whole thing is predicated on it's a today only proposition, which of course is nonsense, because I can almost guarantee if you walk into the timeshare the next day or the next week with money, They will obviously take your money. It's just silly. What is a first visit incentive are sometimes the gifts or the incentives associated with the timeshare. But rest assured that a good deal today will be a good deal in a week, will be a good deal in a month. People should not get pressured into signing something today, especially for an average selling price of $20,000, which is a contract in perpetuity and annual maintenance cost in the range of $1,000 a year. You don't want to be entering into this contract based on a 3-hour high pressure sales pitch from someone who you just met.
So, you know what? Here's the next part. When somebody said hims and haws or whatever, and they're in the meeting, what's the next step? How do they overcome that?
Sometimes they will show them a lower price. Sometimes they will say, you know, what is it? You know, they'll try to uncover what the main objection is. In sales, we were taught uncover the objection. And hopefully, if the salesperson is any good, they will have uncovered an objection early on. Because when the client says no towards the end, it's difficult to overcome an objection. So a savvy salesperson will have uncovered minor objections throughout their presentation. And then when it's time to talk money, then either they can show them a lower price, the sales manager can sometimes do something. But again, consumers need to understand and ask questions along the way so that they don't make a mistake one way or the other. And I say that buying can sometimes be a mistake, and sometimes not buying can be a mistake. You have to understand what the timeshare will do for you, what are your specific needs and wants, and obviously the cost comes into it.
Now, one last thing before we go to our break. What's the typical commission a timeshare salesperson would earn?
I've heard years ago, it used to be much more. I've heard it's in the range of somewhere between 3 to 6%. So not a lot, but that 6% may increase based on how much the salesperson sells in any given month.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Hey, look, everybody, we've got a wonderful discussion here coming on with Lisa Schreier, the Timeshare Crusader. You're going to stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Lisa Schreier. Hey, Cameron, that's Steve. We just finished segment number 1 with Lisa Schreier, the Timeshare Crusader. And in about 10 seconds, we're going to move forward into segment number 2. That was perfect, Lisa.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to pause this for a second. Cameron, we're moving into segment number 2 with Lisa Schreier, the Timeshare Crusader. Hey, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. We've been talking to Lisa Schreier. She is the Timeshare Crusader. She just went through in the first segment how somebody would go through the whole process, how the salespeople look at you when they're looking to sell you a timeshare. We found out how much they make. And if you think about it, if they see 20, 30 people a week for a timeshare presentation, and they end up selling half of those, that means they're selling $300,000 worth of timeshares on a weekly basis, and they're getting 5-6%. That's a pretty good earnings. So, you know what, keep that in mind. They make a lot of money. One thing before we go on to the next segment, next question, Lisa. How long is the typical individual presentation? Is it like 30, 40 minutes? Is it an hour? How long does it typically go?
Typically, I'd say 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had been doing this for 5 years when I finally stopped selling. And as much as I knew, and as much of a veteran as I was, it's almost impossible to get out all the information in 2.5 hours. So I'd say typically, even though whatever piece of paper you're signing that says you agree to this presentation, understand that it's almost never going to last only that long. So I'd say 3 hours is a good idea of how long it's going to take.
Okay, perfect. Now, you know what? There's a bunch of pros, there's a bunch of cons to timeshares. Let's talk about the pros, okay? You know, somebody has the ability to go to a familiar location every year without unpleasant surprises because they've seen the resort, they know what's going on there. And from that perspective, I know people who actually love going to their timeshare every single year. In fact, I know some people who have a timeshare at the Marriott, the Black Rock in Hawaii, and they just love it. They just, in fact, people have asked to buy their timeshare, which has been very nice for them. They like the resort, like amenities and services, because basically they pretty much have everything like a Marriott. And they also like the hassle, to avoid the hassle of, you know, booking a new vacation every year. They just know they're going to Hawaii during their special week, and they've got a great week during the year. But on the flip side, one of the things you alluded to earlier, that people might be paying $1,000 a year in association dues, costs, and you know what, those ongoing costs keep going into perpetuity. You know what, if you need to, let's talk about that. Let's have people understand what the impact of those long-term charges are.
Sure. So in addition to the purchase price and the ongoing annual maintenance fees, there's also a fee for joining the exchange company. The exchange company lets you exchange or trade your timeshare. The two major exchange companies being RCI and Interval International. Whatever resort you buy at is going to be affiliated with one, or in rare cases, both of them. So there's a fee for joining the exchange. There's an actual exchange fee, which is running about, a domestic exchange is running, I believe, $279. So that's something to keep in mind.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. The exchange fee is, so you say, hey, you know what, I have the week of July 15th, but I want the week of August something, but I also want to be in Cancun as opposed to Hawaii. Is that the exchange? Okay, so that, in other words, they're exchanging their week for a different week, or exchanging their location for a different location.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
So if they want to do that, there's a fee.
Two main exchange companies, as I said, RCI or Interval International, referred to as II. So there's a fee for joining. There's a fee for exchanging. There might be, especially if you own on the beach, there might be occasional special assessments. Again, it's one thing people tend to forget about asking, but it's very important to ask about special assessments. Have they been levied? If so, how much have they been levied? There was a famous case a few years ago. Resort in Hawaii assessed a $5,000 special assessment for water intrusion. Their owners were not happy. So it's important to ask these questions. So some resorts levy a cleaning fee, because unlike a hotel where there's typically, at least pre-COVID, daily cleaning, most timeshares do not have daily cleaning. Important to ask. So there's a lot of costs associated with the timeshare that may be glossed over in the presentation, which are very important for consumers to understand, because as you said, they will go up. Back in the early 2000s, when I started selling, an exchange was $99, and now it's close to $300. So it's important to keep that in mind.
That, yeah, and on the cleaning fees and things like that. Now, you talked about special assessments. I know of people who have had those special assessments, and they give them the ability to pay over time, but it's basically an increased cost. In some cases, they had to come up with an extra $300 a month for 2 years in order to deal with their portion of the special assessment, which was really an eye-opener for them. Now, we always have people who, and I've been asked this from time to time about timeshares, where they're saying, hey, you know what, we're not really going anymore. How do we sell this? How do we get out of this timeshare? And they realize they're unable to get out of the timeshare. And then there's many companies that are lawyers that'll try and help them get out of timeshares. So, you know what do people need to know going in is this is something into perpetuity, right? Okay.
Correct.
But if they need to get out, how do they get out?
It's a great question. And I would say 90% of the calls and emails I receive have to do with people wanting out. So they fall into two categories. First category is the timeshare is fully paid off. Second category is the timeshare is not fully paid off, they still owe on it. Let's tackle the second one first. If you still owe on your timeshare, there is a 99% chance that you will not be able to sell it. And the reason is quite simple. The industry does, in my opinion, they do their best to suppress the secondary market. So the value of that timeshare on the resale market is in 99% of the cases less than what you owe on it. If you take a quick look at eBay or Craigslist, there's people selling their timeshare or trying to sell their timeshare for $1. So if you still owe on it, you're in big trouble because you're not going to be able to sell it. It's just a simple fact. Now, if it's paid for, there is a legitimate secondary market. In rare cases, some developers will buy it back, but that's in very rare cases. A stopgap measure is, of course, you may want to rent your timeshare on the open market and at least rent it for what your maintenance fees are, because that's a way of recouping at least some of your money. But there is a legitimate secondary market. Just understand that the value of that timeshare is in most cases less than $2,000 on average.
Okay, so if you want out, you're maybe getting 10, 20 cents on the dollar if you're lucky.
Correct. And some of the other thing you mentioned, there are any number of companies out there that claim to be able to get you out of your timeshare. Now, Steve, I don't like generalizations, so I will say 99% of them are outright scams. First of all, if anybody contacts you up front, if they initiate contact, it's a scam. If they tell you getting out of your timeshare is quick, easy, simple, it's a scam. They're not easy. The timeshare industry has had 40 plus years to construct these contracts in a way that obviously favors the industry. So it's not quick, it's not easy, it's not simple. And most of these companies want an upfront fee, which is a huge red flag. You do not want to be paying upfront to anyone who claims they can either sell or, we have a buyer for your timeshare and the offer will be 3 times what you paid for it. It's a scam. Yeah.
No, I totally get that part. What about these? So basically these law firms that, that's right. That there's a few people that got sued over their publications with the timeshare exit programs.
Right.
So yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this. One of the questions that came in on our viewers line is this. They had a relative who went to the timeshare presentation. They got hooked in hook, line, and sinker. And you know what? A couple days later, they decided they were going to go, say, hey, I want out. Okay. Do they have the ability to do that?
Yes. In the United States, depending on what state you buy it in, every resort will have a mandated legal right of rescission that will range anywhere from 3 days in some states to where I am in Florida, it's 10 days. It's important to understand when you're buying and you're signing the contract, always ask what is the rescission period? And more importantly, what steps do I have to take in order to exercise my right of rescission? But yes, every timeshare in the United States has a legally mandated rescission period.
Okay, so so what are the typical contracts say that somebody has to do to say, hey, I don't want this?
Typically, it's a certified letter. Sometimes some resorts will accept the rescission if you go back to the resort, sign a piece of paper, have it notarized. But again, follow the instructions exactly. Return anything you are mandated to return. I've heard more than my share of sob stories of people who were a day late in getting it out, and a day late, you own it. So if the contract says you have 5 days, they stick to that 5 days. So follow the instructions to the letter, and they will vary, but they're nothing mysterious. They're nothing arcane. Mm-hmm. Typically, it's a certified letter.
Okay. All right. So, and the reason why I'm asking that is there's a follow-up because they didn't take the time to read the contract to find out exactly what they needed to do and weren't able to get out of it. So that's why I wanted to ask that question.
Sure.
Okay. So here's the next thing. If somebody's looking at getting a timeshare, they're interested in a timeshare, maybe going to the presentation to get the timeshare, how do they get a great deal?
Well, a great deal varies, Steve, as you know, from person to person. But I always tell people, check the secondary market first, because that timeshare that the developer is selling for an average price of $20,000 can be found on the legitimate secondary market for, as you said, 10 to 30 cents on the dollar. So it's always a good idea to check what is it going for in the resale market. Understand that some developers do put usage restrictions on a secondary market timeshare. So again, even if you're buying it on the secondary market and you supposedly have lots of time because there's no pressure, you need to understand what it is you're buying. So what I've done is I've condensed a lot of knowledge into 19 questions that people must ask before they buy a timeshare. And I throw in an additional 9 if they're buying it on the resale market. And I'm not ripping people off. I charge $8.99 for that. So it's 19 questions you need to ask. And I always tell people who hesitate, you want to spend $8.99 or you want to make a $20,000 mistake.
Well, you know what? I think that's interesting that people obviously would like things for free, but you never get anything worthwhile for free. So I think it's interesting.
Longtime readers know that I say avoid anyone who uses the words free, perfect, always, or never.
That's a good philosophy. So how do people go about getting those 19 questions plus the 9 more if they're buying on the resale market?
Sure. They can email me directly at Lisa Schreier. That's SCHREIER617 @gmail.com. If they miss that, just Google the Timeshare Crusader and they can find me online on my blog. I also tweet at Lisa Looks At, so they can reach me any number of ways.
Okay. Could you tell everybody how to follow your blog?
Sure. If the easiest way is Google the Timeshare Crusader, or if they already want to type in the web address, it's the word. Wait, I forget. I changed the domain a little while ago. So it's the Timeshare Crusader.blogspot.com.
And hey, everybody, if you would like to get those 19 questions plus the 9 more if you're going to buy in the secondary market, Lisa, could you give your email to get that one more time?
Sure. It's Lisa Schreier. That's LISASCHREIER617 @gmail.com.
Lisa, I want to thank you for being here today. I think you've given our listeners a wealth of information. And I think it's really important to understand what somebody's going to put you through before you go do it.
Absolutely.
And to know that if I like that, take a moment if you're going to make a big decision where you say, you know what, I'm going to take 2 days and think about this, regardless of how much time you spent with them. And if you're really thinking that you should be doing it, hey, always go back because they're going to let you do that. They're going to allow you to buy it. But if you don't think about it anymore and you don't think it's important, obviously it's a good decision because you would have not used it and had buyer's remorse. So
correct.
So again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you. And you know what? Stay safe, stay healthy. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Saving with Steve. Perfect. Hey, Cameron, we just finished segment 2. Now we're only going to be doing 3 segments today, Cameron, and that's it. We've started a new show format, so it'll only be 30 minutes now. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that. And I'm going to go ahead and start. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. This is segment 3. Hey, you know what? I want to thank you all for joining us. This is Saving with Steve show where we talk about the ins and outs of money. I want to truly thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you letting your friends and family know about the Saving with Steve show. All replays are available at www.savingwithsteve.com. savingwithsteve.us. If you're enjoying the stories of helpful information, insight with Saving with Steve, then I encourage you to subscribe to our Google Play, Spotify channel, our YouTube channel, so you never miss a show, and check out a few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, AM/FM 247. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal and financial freedom. Also follow us on Facebook and join the Saving with Steve Sexton's Insiders Club at savingwithsteve.us. You can get all the replays, guest gifts, and more. Now, Lisa Schreier is wonderful. You probably want to re-listen to that. But now I'm going to be talking about how to calculate how much you need to save in an emergency fund. It's pretty interesting. You know what? Sudden car repairs, medical emergencies, job loss can all lead to unexpected debt if you're not prepared. And many people experienced that over the last 2 years and are still experiencing that. How much should you save to safeguard your finances? It's a difficult thing to predict how much these and other emergencies could cost, but saving 3 to 6 months of worth of expenses is a good goal. If that seems too steep, saving even $500 will help you avoid going into debt to finance a small car repair or a medical bill. So here's what we need to do to determine how much we need to save. First of all, you want to make a list of your rent or your mortgage, utilities, phone, cable, internet, car payments, gas, if you're riding the bus tickets, okay, credit card payments and other debts, your groceries and other needed expenses that you can't do without. Once you have that total, you know what? Some of you are going to say to yourself, well, nah, I can't save anything, let alone this. Okay. Or you're not sure. Hey, I might need to cut some corners here. Others might be saying, yeah, this is a reasonable number for sure. But the big question is, how do you go about reducing your expenses, continuing with what you're doing to start saving the money? The key here is every little bit counts. Okay. So one of the things you can do is you can go online and get one of those automated tools or an app or a banking account. And all you really need to do is move so much money every single pay period into your savings account for emergencies. You know what? You can do it automatically. You can set it up through your payroll. It's very simple, very straightforward. Now, next thing, count your coins and bills. Empty your pockets each day and start collecting the extra cash. So if you have coins or dollar bills, then take that collection to the bank and put it directly in your savings account instead of your checking account. If you're doing this and it's $10, $20 every single week, hey, that is what, $40 to $80 a month, almost $1,000 a year. It's a great way to get started. Okay. When you want to watch your spending, use the dollar bills instead of the credit cards or the debit cards. It's harder to part with cold, hard cash than just plopping down a card and paying for it later. Now, prep for your grocery shopping. People lose more money on impulse buying when it comes to shopping for food or groceries, the whole shot. Sometimes they overbuy. I know I do that more than my fair share. So a little work before going to the grocery store can make a long way to help you save money on your groceries. You want to take a look at your pantry so you're not overbuying. There's been many times where I looked at my pantry and there's a couple sacks of potatoes and one was rotting and I had the other one there and wasn't even planning to use it for a while. Okay. Make a list to avoid impulse buying. Okay. Get coupons. Go to coupon.com to get rebates and save on the foods that you're buying. Okay. When you're going out to eat, order smaller servings at a restaurant. Opt for appetizers or split an entree with your dining companion. Why would you want to do that? One, hey, you don't have to pay as much. I have one set of clients, one of the ways that they looked at losing weight, it's really interesting. One of the ways they looked at losing weight is when they went out to eat, as opposed to buying 2 plates at 18 or 20 bucks a piece, plus a drink, they're up to almost $60 for the meal. They decided to share one of the larger meals. Okay. So they would get a surf and turf. It might be $25, but they're both getting the same meal. It's half. They're eating the chips or whatever, and they're having that drink, but their bill went from 60 down to 30. That's a $30 savings every time they go out to eat, which means their money went farther, but more importantly, they weren't wasting it and able to save some. Get discounts on entertainment. Take advantage of free days at museum, national parks to save on entertainment costs. Ask for discounts if you're a senior, if you're students or you're military. Hey, you could save a bunch of money that way. Also consider creating a social interaction with a group of people, either through hiking at a park, at a lake, or whatever, to where all you got to do is drive there and you only have the cost of gas, although gas has gone up, but it's less expensive than paying to go somewhere. Okay. Restrict online shopping. You know what? It's so easy to impulse shop when you're online, because then you just click it and they send it to you. It's already paid. Hey, consider doing this. Before you complete that online shopping deal, make it so that you have to put in your credit card information, your address, the whole shop. That way, you know what? It'll make you think a little bit more before you hit that impulse button. And the next thing you know, you got something on your doorstep that you just paid for. Hey, make your own gifts. Do it yourself. You know, saving money on affordable gift ideas like herb gardens or gift baskets. You know what we did? My wife and I, along with my mom, put together all of her recipes, along with pictures from when she was little, all the way through today with the whole family. You know what? The reality is the family loved that gift and will keep it longer than that shirt or that gift card that we gave them last year. In fact, if it's a shirt or a pair of jeans or shoes, they probably, returned it and bought something else with it. So it wasn't that important to you. Okay. Lower your car payment. Interest rates are low. You can always refinance your car debt. Not a problem. Switch your cell phone plans. You know what? We did this. We went from one of the major carriers to a carrier that was on the same network. We didn't have any contract. We paid lower monthly fees and saved $80 a month. The reality is, every little bit counts. Next, cable, internet. Everybody's streaming now. How many people are actually watching cable TV on a regular basis? The reality is you can get a streaming channel. We did this. We were paying almost $270 a month. That's a lot of money. And then we realized, geez, we have these cable packages. We just went with the internet and bought an AT&T Live and a couple streaming packages, and we saved almost $100 a month. Like I said, every little bit counts. That's $1,200 a year. Now, monitoring your electric bill, your gas bill, and all that. So when you take a look at our electric bill, we found out that if during the winter time, the thermostat is set at a temperature too lower, we can probably save $20 or $30 a month. So figure out what that is for you. You might be able to save some money, but just by putting an extra sweater on. Again, if it's $20, $30 a month, that's $20, $30 extra you didn't have in your emergency fund. Now, lower student loan payments. Income-driven repayment plans can lower your monthly student loan payment by several $100s. Okay, this is a very important thing because it brings more money into your pocket, more money to save. You can use that saving not only for emergency fund, but to create a retirement plan. Now, refinancing your mortgage, interest rates are low. If you're paying more than the current interest rate, it makes sense to look on this. I've had clients that have saved $200 to $500 to $1,000 on their mortgage payments just by refinancing. Now, one of the big things is this: you need to track your spending. So make a list of everything you're spending. Pull out that debit cards, the credit cards, the whole spot. Get all the receipts out there. List everything that you're spending. Figure out things that you can do without. For example, look at those subscriptions that you subscribe to, all those things that you had to sign on for that 30-day free trial that give your credit card, and now you're paying for them. You know what? We've seen multiple fitness apps, $5 and $10 a month, $15, $20 a month. You don't think it's very much, but they add up. There's food delivery services, there's magazine subscriptions, association subscriptions. Quite frankly, if you're not using them on a consistent basis, get rid of them, delete them, stop them. Every single bit counts. Now, when you're tracking your spending, make sure you get the whole thing tracked. Track it on a monthly basis so you can see what you're spending, make adjustments, and you know what? Look at creating some cash flow for yourself. Once you've created that cash flow will enable you to save. And if you can save for an emergency fund and then start for retirement and then maybe for a house or a new car, the whole shot, it'll put you in a better position, actually have less stress in your life. With that, you can start setting specific savings goals in the whole shot. So, hey, you know what? That's it for the Saving with Steve show today. I want to thank you all for joining us. We had Lisa Schreier, the Timeshare Crusader, gave us the ins and outs of what's going on with timeshare. If you're looking to save money, or reduce your expenses, to save money for emergencies, travel, house, whatever, we just gave you that. Next week, we have Isma Mangla, who's from Magnify Money, she's going to be talking to us about how we can make sure we can bring people up that need some help with their savings and how you could do it. She's going to have some wonderful tips. We're going to look forward to seeing you next week. I want to thank you for joining us here, right here on Saving with Steve. Stay safe, stay healthy.